Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. Today I'm reviewing a fountain pen from Narwhal. Narwhal is a brand that was established in 2019 and debuted at the 2019 DC Pen Show. I think it's a new brand, it's an interesting brand. They've come out with two models so far. This is the first one, this is the Piston fountain pen, and this is what they debuted with. This debuted in 4 colors. There was the pink, there's a pink, a yellow, a green, and a blue. And I have the green here today, which is called the Merman Green. And this is how it comes packaged, in a really nice, sort of very sturdy white cardboard box with the nice sort of narwhal logo in the sort of gradient from green through to orange in the writing, and a little picture of the narwhal on the front there with its big toothy horn on the front, and of course narwhal being considered by many as the origin of the unicorn myth. So you lift the cap off, the top of the box off, and the pen sits in a piece of foam. This is a turned acrylic pen, and I think this material is really interesting. This is the Merman Green. Nice swirls of black and white through there, lots of depth to it. Semi-translucent, so like at points you can see some of the mechanism of the piston in there. And just a really nice pen with a nice sort of chrome plated or chrome coloured sort of furniture on it. So let's look at the pen, let's talk about some of the features. We'll do a writing sample, I'll talk about what I like and don't like and all of that sort of stuff. So this is the Narwhal Piston filling fountain pen. The top of the cap there just has a little plain chrome disc in it, and then sort of fairly flat top, slight sort of dome to it. The cap sort of swells out a little bit towards the end of the cap there. Nice sort of clip, which, you know, I think people have said looks, you know, it could have been a design feature to make it look like the, you know, the horn on the narwhal or something like that. Some people think it looks like a trident. I think it looks a little bit like a clammy sort of clam shell sort of look to it. Thinking of, like, you know, that Birth of Venus painting, that sort of thing. It's relatively springy, firm springy, like usable. Little step down off the edge of the cap onto a band here, which sits on the body of the pen, and that says Narwhal and Narwhal. It's very clean engraving. It's nice. The body of the pen, being a piston filler, there's not going to be a whole lot of variation in the shape of the body, but it does sort of taper ever so slightly down to another metal band there, and then onto the piston knob, which is just got like a domed acrylic. It's the same sort of acrylic all the way through the pen, and I think it's, as I said, it's a nice acrylic. These sort of depths of the swirls there through the white and the black, I think, are really nice. There's a bit of chatoyance there as well. As I said, it is slightly translucent, so you can see the mechanism of the piston through, and I think a couple of the other models are even, like the yellow one for instance, are even more transparent than this. It's a screw cap, and it comes off in 1 3/4 turns, and the threads are quite smooth. You know, there's a nice little point where they engage and it feels very secure, and yes, it reveals the section here. Threads are quite smooth, and because of that little band, there's very little sort of step down. The section does sort of taper down and have that little sort of like little flare on the end there, and it reveals a number 6 nib with the narwhal once again engraved there on the top, and some scroll work, a plastic feed, and these nibs, and include actually all of the pen elements, are made in-house by Narwhal. So this is not like a German nib, a Schmidt or something like that, put on, you know, a pen. This is a in-house made nib, which I think is like both brave and actually kind of awesome. We see a lot of brands using nibs by Schmidt, Jovo, Boch, you know, and a couple of other sort of lesser known manufacturers. But for a pen, particularly their first pen, to go all out and put their own nib on the pen, I think is a wonderful, wonderful step. The pen is a good size, you know, like it sits nicely in the hand, it's a good shape. The section is quite long, and because it's a number 6 size nib, we've got a nice sort of distance between the writing surface and our fingers, which is, you know, quite, you know, good and ergonomic. My biggest thing with this pen, just straight up, is that it doesn't post. Like, looking at this pen and this cap, you would think that the pen would post. It goes on, but it does not stay on at all. Like, it is just not designed to post. And the manufacturers of the pen, the owners of the company, they don't, you know, that posting a pen is not an important feature for them, so it was not included into the design, and that's absolutely fine. But if you are someone who wants to post their pens, this is not going to be the pen to do that. So because it is a piston filler, it has a good ink capacity. Now, the piston in this particular pen, I won't operate it because it is filled with ink, Aurora Black in this case, but the piston feels smooth and it feels effective. Having, you know, cleaned out the pen using the, you know, drawing water up, pushing it out, drawing water up, pushing it out, I have found that the piston mechanism seems reliable. It seems smooth enough, but you know, I actually did struggle a little bit just to get like a particularly good feel on this pen. So, like, this is the first pen from a company. They have come out with a second model since, and they will continue to evolve their models and the finishes that are available and all of those sorts of things. And this is a wonderful pen, and at this price point, which I'll get into shortly, I think, you know, we're talking about a pen that does actually perform very, very well. But, you know, sort of getting, like, it does have a good ink capacity, but getting a good feel, I found to be just a little bit sort of, a little bit tricky. So let's talk about the size, let's talk about the dimensions, and let's do a couple of quick size comparisons. So I have 4 pens here to compare it to. Firstly, the Lamy Safari. Like, so you can see, as soon as I put the Safari down, we're not talking about a small pen here. It is a very good size. The Safari comes in about 140 millimeters, so it's both longer and girthier than the Lamy Safari. I also have here a Visconti Mirage, which is, you know, a nice, you know, sort of size pen as well, and so particularly in terms of girth. And once again, the Narwhal is slightly bigger. Another acrylic pen that I thought I would compare it to is the Esterbrook Esty, which is at a much higher price point and is a cartridge converter, but a wonderful, wonderful pen nonetheless. Similar sort of size. And, you know, I compared this pen in a few ways to some of the pen BBS pens that are available, you know, using turned acrylics, you know, sort of in-house made nibs and all that sort of thing. I do find the Narwhal to be better built than most pen BBS pens, and have a much better weight to it. This is a substantial pen in the hand, and, you know, everything feels substantial with it, which is always nice to feel. Another pen I compare it to in a few ways is the TWSBI Eco. Now, it is slightly more expensive than the TWSBI Eco, but it is a very affordable piston filling pen and a good size. I'll just actually move these around so we can actually put them next to each other, and a very good size pen in the hand. I will compare it in terms of like uncapped size to a couple of these, just so we can get a good sense of, you know, sort of what we're talking about, because as I said, this is not a pen that posts. So in comparison to the Eco and the Safari, it's a good length. So if you can use these pens without posting, you're not going to have an issue whatsoever with the Narwhal here. And while we're talking about size, this pen comes in at about 145 millimeters. As I said, a few millimeters longer than a Lamy Safari. So posted 145, unposted it is 130. So as I said, very good size in the hand. Posted, it becomes very long, but it doesn't stay posted, so you don't need to worry. The grip section runs from about 10 millimeters to about 12 millimeters, so it sits in the middle there, around that, like that nice sort of comfortable spot for a lot of people, around the 11 millimeter mark. The weight of the pen is 25 grams, but the body itself is about 13. So, you know, like, it's not a super heavy pen, it's very comfortable. And for long writing sessions, if this was a pen you decided to use for such a thing, you know, it's very comfortable in the hand, it's not too heavy, and the balance is nice, sort of into the fingers. Like, these metal cap band here, sorry, does add a little bit of weight, with the piston mechanism being sort of up towards the back of the pen. So let's do a writing sample, and then I'll sort of talk about a few pros and cons and things. And we'll talk a little bit about the nib. So here I have some Clairefontaine paper, and we're going to do the writing sample here with the Narwhal Piston fountain pen. So, Narwhal Piston fountain pen. It has a steel number 6 nib, which does mean you could potentially swap the nib out with another brand if you could find one that fit the housing and the feed and all of those sorts of things. Number 6, and this is a fine. It only comes in fine. One nib size for this pen is available, and it is, I actually think it's more like a fine medium. It does run a little broader than most of the fines that I use, so not too bad. The ink here is, as I said, Aurora Black. Nice solid black ink, and this is the 3rd ink I have had in this pen because I wanted to try different inks, not just, obviously the same ink for a period of time. I wanted to try different inks because the way this nib writes. Let's just do a quick little writing sample. So it's smooth enough. Like, it's not scratchy, but there's a lot of feedback on that nib. Like, I'll just do a little bit of right-handed so we can sort of hear and feel that. Terrible handwriting. I'm a lefty, so my right-handed writing is not great. But you can hear there is drag on that nib. It's not a bad nib. It does remind me a lot of the nibs from Pen BBS. Now, it's not a turned-up nib like some of those Pen BBS nibs are, particularly their fines. It is a standard round nib, but I just find there's just a little bit of drag on it. And yes, you could probably smooth that out, but I don't like to play with the nibs before I have reviewed them. I like to review the pen as it comes. And this is fine. It's okay. But Aurora Black is quite a wet ink. And this pen isn't dry, don't get me wrong. It's laying down a lovely amount of ink. But there is a drag on the nib. It's, as I said, nothing that can be fixed with a bit of, micro mesh or, something like that. But as it comes, there is just a bit of drag sort of on the nib. The tines are aligned. It's not scratchy, just feedback. And for me, it verges on a little bit too much feedback. Now, as I said, this is a wet ink, so I have done that to get the most out of the pen. A drier ink in this does feel draggy. Even something like Diamine, I think I had Diamine Meadow in it originally to sort of match the green. Even that felt quite draggy. Not dry, but very draggy. Other little things. Reverse writing is actually really pleasant. Drier, much finer, but quite smooth. In fact, not that different to Right Way Up. It is a stiff nib. Like, we can push down to let more ink out, and it does let a lot of ink out, like it becomes a gusher. But you're not opening up the tines so much in terms of flex, so we're not getting line variation in that respect. It's just a good standard sort of everyday writing nib. And with a pen at this sort of price point, with this, sort of size and everything, that's actually quite a good feature on a pen like this. So let's talk pros and cons. Firstly, that nib, that feedback just pushes it a little bit too far for me. I don't think it's a bad nib, and as I said, I think you could definitely smooth that out. But on Clairefontaine paper like that with a wet ink, still feeling that drag in left and right, motion. It's not just me pushing it across as a left-handed writer. There is that issue, and I think that is something that Narwhal can definitely improve going ahead, is sort of sort of smoothing out the nib and also giving more nib options. There is only fine, and I use fine because it is not fine, it's quite medium. So yes, that's always something to be aware of. The pen doesn't post. That for me, it's not a deal breaker, but this is a pen that should post. Really, it's a pen that should post. It should post probably to about there, making it quite, it'll be a big pen, but it should be able to. That metal band there on the piston knob, I understand why they haven't decided to post it. They don't post their pens, and also if you post a piston filler pen, there is always the risk of accidentally turning it and expelling ink. But it just feels like a pen that should post, and that's something that I have definitely noticed. Not an issue yet, but something I would be concerned about with this pen is the fact that the acrylic here around the edge of the cap is not super thick. My concern is that would be a stress point. Because there's no cap band or anything, there's nothing to support it going onto those screws, it could crack. That would be my only, in terms of the actual mechanism of the pen, that would be my primary stress point. I think the piston is pretty decent. It feels good at least, and you can take these pens apart and maintain them, and you can unscrew it and take out the piston and clean it and all of that sort of stuff. So I think it's pretty safe, but the stress point I would say is cracking around the edge of the cap. While we're here, let's talk price. In the US, this pen retails for $45. It's not at a huge amount of retailers yet. And in Australia, the price I have found is around the $70 mark. Now, so that puts it in a price point above things like the Eco, and definitely above things like the Safari and that sort of thing. But you are getting a piston filling pen here. It is a turned acrylic. This is not injection molded. You cannot do this sort of acrylic in an injection molded pen. So it's all in-house made, so you are going to pay a tiny little bit more, but still $70 or $45 US for a pen like this, I don't think is too bad. It does make it more expensive than, say, some of the Pen BBS pens, and they do have some very interesting filling systems, and they have worked on their nibs and created a range of different nibs. But in terms of piston filling, nice acrylic, and there are lots of acrylic pens on the market now, I think this is a pretty well-placed pen in terms of its price. Let's talk about the pros. Firstly, the size of this pen is great. It's a nice sort of size pen in the hand. It feels substantial, and it's a good size when you're writing, and the balance is very, very good. I like the section. It's not too narrow. It's got a good length. Those threads aren't sharp. You don't feel the steps down, even if you hold the pen further back. And because it's a number 6 size nib, you are at a good place sort of on the page. It's a piston filling pen, so you get more ink than a cartridge converter. It does hold more ink, which is great. So if you're using it as an everyday writing pen, you are going to get more out of it. The price point is good. As I said, 70 Australian or 45 US. It's not a super expensive pen, and you are getting some features on the pen that put it into a nice price point for where it is. The range of colors, with new colors coming out, hopefully soon. With the 4 main ones, the yellow, the pink, blue, and this green, they are vibrant colors. They're not going to be for everyone, but there's something, there's enough variation in there that you might find something that really appeals. I like the packaging, that plain simple cardboard, nice, lettering, nice clean design. I know packaging isn't necessarily a selling feature for a lot of people on pens, but if you're going to get a pen and the packaging is nice, it feels nice to get and it feels nice to open. The last thing I want to say is that the finish on this pen is really nice. It's smooth, the threads are nice, the piston feels nice, there's no ridges anywhere, there's no sharp points. It feels nice, it looks nice, it's got nice polish to it, that chatoyance, that material. It's just a nicely finished, well-presented pen. If you're into these sort of brighter acrylic pens, I think Narwhal is an interesting brand. So please check out the brand. Look at your local retailers for who stocks it. It's an interesting pen, and with sort of support and selling pens, they can continue to develop the pens and develop their line of pens. And I'm certainly looking forward to seeing how the brand develops. As I said, they're a year old. This is a new brand on the market, and they wanted to create an everyday pen, and they have certainly done that. It's a good size, it writes well enough, and it will write better, if you can tune the nib, or once they sort of keep developing those skills. So this was the Narwhal piston filling fountain pen in the Merman green finish. Hope you found this video interesting and useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notifications button if you want to stay up to date with the videos that I produce. Please feel free to get in touch using any of the platforms listed below. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at @the_offstage_me, or you can contact me on any of my videos here, or drop me an email, which is also listed down below. If you have products you think I should be looking at, or if there's a way you'd like to support the channel by sponsoring a review or providing an item for a review, I would love to hear from you. In the meantime, enjoy your pens, enjoy writing, and I'll talk to you soon.